Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for November 6th through 12th. This week I read one book, I watched 2 shows, I watched 2 movies, and I listened to 1 book. The one physical book I got through this week is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackwith. This is the first ever pick for the Eat, Shit, and Live book club, which is hosted by Bear over at A2 Brody. If you haven't seen my announcement, I will link that down below. This is the first pick of their book club where they ask their friends to give them some tropes and things they like in horror, and then they are going to give them some options as to books they could read together. They pick one, they read it together. At the end of the month, there's a live stream. So we will have a live stream either December 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. We just haven't decided what day that's happening yet. And of course, because this is Bear's book club, it will be over on Bear's channel, so make sure to check them out down below. The Library of the Unwritten is the first in the Hell's Library trilogy, and we thought this was going to be a little bit more horror than it actually was. But of course that's totally on us, because nowhere in the promotional literature does this say this is horror. This is more of a dark fantasy and more of an adventure story, and I enjoyed it for that. Essentially, we have 4 point-of-view characters, the first one being Claire, who is the librarian in Hell. Although she's been doing this for quite some time, she's not actually from Hell. She is in fact human. She died sometime in the 80s, and she's been the librarian there since a little bit after that, and you get into that as the story progresses. Another point-of-view character is Leto, who brings her a message saying that one of her books has gone missing and she needs to go to Earth to find it. Leto looks like a teenage demon, but he's got a little bit more going on, as again you find throughout the book. We also have Brevity, who is the assistant librarian and who used to be a muse, which is a fascinating job, but then she kept some of the inspiration for herself, which is why she got kicked out and why she now has this different gig. And our 4th point-of-view character is Ramiel. He is actually a fallen angel, and he's been working in purgatory for quite some time and would like to see himself go back into heaven if he could. These characters all come together in an action-adventure that takes place in Hell, Earth, and various places in between. Like I mentioned, this is the first in a trilogy, and I'm probably going to have to pick up the other books, not because this one ended in a cliffhanger, but because I'm actually invested in these characters and want to see what adventure they go on next. On to what I watched this week, the first thing being House. Yes, we're still making our way through this at quite a quick pace. When we started off the beginning of the week, we were on the 2nd episode of the 3rd season, and now we're quite a handful of episodes into the 4th. In fact, if you know the show whatsoever, the fellow race is now done, and it's been narrowed down as to who is going to be working on his staff. The show continues to be informative and interesting with little nods to the original, and for the most part, I like it. There are occasionally characters who just drive me up the wall because they're written in ways where they're fat-phobic, for example. For example, the character of Chase is super fat-phobic. Anytime there is an overweight character that they have to help, he is a dick about it, and I hate that. And of course, House is often an asshole and gets away with saying things that you just really shouldn't, because it amuses him. It is such a fascinating character, and I would also like to look up at the end of this to see how many different random skills he shows throughout the show, because he's constantly getting bored and learning new things. Like, he's been playing guitar since the 8th grade. Sure, he can play piano. He also speaks several languages. He also can do different balance-related things. And it would just be fun to see how many of these things were things that Hugh Laurie could do previously, or how many of these things he learned for the role. I also stayed current on this week's episode of RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 4. This was the Squirrel Games episode, so it was an acting challenge. These are always a little bit hit or miss because the scripts are often generally pretty terrible, although you have a little bit of fun watching them. Like, you have a younger cousin who's doing a skit and you're like, sure, that was adorable, good job. I enjoyed the drama at the end of this episode as to who may or may not be going home. This week, at the recommendation of our roommate, we watched Jo Koy live from the Los Angeles Forum, and it was just as funny as she told me it was going to be. I've never actually seen anything by this comic before, but based on what he told us in this special, I want to go back and watch his previous 3 specials. Not only because I know there's going to be quality jokes, but because I know how hard he's worked to get to where he is. His humor is also very inappropriate at times, but in a way where most people are generally laughing at it. The feature-length film that we watched this week was Alien. Myself, Chad, Megan, and her boyfriend are eventually going to watch all of the movies in this series, but because I've never seen any of them before and some of them have seen various numbers of them, we've decided to go by release date for this watch through. This is obviously a movie that I've seen referenced in many other things, so I knew the big scene that everybody knows and everybody parodies, but I didn't know many things other than that. There was also a lot of Chad yelling at the screen because this movie is from the 70s, but they're supposed to be 100 years more advanced than we currently are, so there was a lot of technological things where you're just like, oh, that tech is so old. And it makes us wonder if when we watch the prequels to this, if the tech is going to be more advanced. That is something I will find out in time. Also, I just had to cackle to myself when we got to a certain shot in the movie, because I read something a while ago where there was a scene where Sigourney Weaver is in her underpants and she refused to shave her pubic hair, and Ridley Scott was so salty about it that he actually spent like $5 grand in post altering the film so it didn't look like you could see her pubic hair through the underwear, and that just makes me laugh a lot. That also made a lot of people want to have this released with the pubic hair, because why would you edit that out? You could have just not had that shot, but no. The book I listened to this week is Thank You for Listening. This was such an absolute treat. I'm quite certain that I've listened to things narrated by this audiobook narrator before, who is also the author of this book, Julia Whelan. I knew that name, and I'm pretty sure it's because I always write down who narrates the audiobooks I listen to in my spreadsheet. And having somebody who's on both sides of the project, audiobook narrating and authoring, and having a book about audiobook narrators, really spoke to me. And then the fact that this book was just so damn good. As you might have guessed, our main character in this book is an audiobook narrator. She's actually one of the high up ones. She's actually won some very prestigious awards for her work. And her best friend is somebody she's known since Juilliard. She is also an actress, and she's getting into some big films at this point. Our main character used to be a film actress, but quite a few years ago she had a form of accident, which you will get into eventually in the book, which has left her with some scars, some disfiguration, and a permanent eye patch. Her boss, who is getting up there in years, ends up sick over this weekend where he's supposed to go to this conference that has to do with audiobook narration and selling audiobooks and that type of thing, so she takes his place. She's in Vegas for a very short time. It actually overlaps with when her best friend's going to be there for something, so they decide to meet up. However, instead of them having this amazing celebratory night, her best friend is called away to do a very impromptu audition, so she is left drinking alone at the bar. She figures she's gonna finish up, then go back and do some work in the hotel room, go to sleep, have a very chill night in. However, somebody sits down next to her and they start really getting on. At the end of this encounter, it's basically decided that this was a perfect encounter and we're not going to see each other again, because obviously neither of them are from there, and where they are from is not the same place. When she gets back to regular life, she finds out this author that she used to do work for has recently passed, and the people that own the rights to her work actually have this project and they want her to be one of the co-narrators. The genre of these books is romance, and she hasn't done romance in a very long time, and when she did narrate romance, she did it under a pseudonym, like many people do. I actually have a friend who does voiceover work and does have a pseudonym for when she is narrating things of the romance or the erotica genre. She's not really sure she wants to return to the genre, but it looks like it's probably an offer she can't refuse. Not only because she could really use that money because her grandmother lives in an assisted living facility and she might have to be moved into a more secure area of it soon, but because her co-narrator would be this very elusive audiobook narrator that everybody in the romance world absolutely loves, but nobody knows who he is. And of course, the anonymity makes it a lot easier to flirt back and forth. One of the genius things about this book is it is full of classic romance tropes. There are tons of them in there, and it's so much fun to see them not only play out, but be pointed out by the characters, because they're just like, this is ridiculous. This is why I think romance is X, Y, or Z and that type of thing, and the fact that it's actually happening to them is just so good. If you are a fan of audiobooks, I highly recommend this. If you're not a fan of audiobooks but you want to give them a try, this is an excellent one to listen to. I learned a lot of things about the industry, and all of the side characters were also fleshed out. After listening to this book, I actually had to tell Chad about this very minor side character that we only see in one scene named Birdie, because she was just so hilariously and genuinely written. If you've read this book and can't remember who Birdie is, she is the one with the dip recipe, and I just had to explain all of that to Chad because I thought it was just so perfectly done. That that's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!